I'm Sarah, a very proud brand ambassador for Ceres Organics, and I'm here today with co-founder Noel, and we're going to be talking about the whole world of organics, why we should bother, how I got started in it, and how you did as well. I'll touch on my story, Noel, which you know very well. It was when I had my daughter, who's now 12, and when she started on solids, that was my first step into discovering the beautiful world of organic food, and really it just opened Pandora's box for me and I've never looked back. How about you, Noel? How did it all begin?
Kia ora, Sarah. For me, it began back when I was 21. I read a book, and I didn't realize at the time, but I had grown very disillusioned. I had an intense interest in the world, and it waned, and I became disillusioned. And it didn't seem any point knowing all these single facts. It didn't sort of connect to anything. And I read a book that was all about connection, just how everything's connected. But it came out of such a deep knowledge, and that knowledge was not in the world. And I thought, how on earth could I go through school and through university and not hear any of this? And it just opened to me that there is another world that's there, and has a whole different picture, especially of the earth and of the human being. And so from the age of 21, that's what I followed.
And so the first step, actually, like every great business, well, many, started in a garage, didn't it? Can you talk us through that?
It started in a study group, actually, when a group of us came together with this common idea that we wanted to know, particularly we wanted to look into social and economic problems in the world and look for other answers. And then Juliet, who was one of the members of the study group we had, said, I'm going to start a co-op. And we said, whoa, we're all in, we support you. And then it just dawned on us bit by bit that this was the vehicle that we would bring to life what we were beginning to live.
So in those very early days, obviously the food landscape, so to speak, looked very, very different. And perhaps people were enjoying organic without even necessarily knowing that it was organic. How has that changed now, and how important is it for us to understand the value of organic?
40 odd years ago, there was a little bit of organic, but not very much, and it was certainly not really known. In fact, there was no certification in New Zealand at this time, or just a little bit. The food was beginning to become intensely full of additives. So beginning down that path was a passion for sure. And beginning to make it available to more people, and beginning to say there's an alternative.
So since those early days of, I'm assuming, fresh produce out of the co-op.
Yes, fresh produce.
Now an incredible range of products that are stocked wide and far. You're venturing into a slightly new realm of children, and I think that's so beautiful personally. And toddlers, yes, because that's how my journey started. Can you talk us through that process and how that's all evolving?
Well, for us, what we have is trying to give everyone an alternative for all the things that they would normally buy off the shelf in a grocery store. So now we want to expand our offering to a wider range. But I think it's particularly important for children as they grow up, and sort of come into the world, that their bodies are not hardened into the world. They're still very tender beings, and mothers recognize that. Mothers want to really look after and feed their children just the best, and it's to make available more foods that they can add into children's diet, and to make sure that the tastes they get in their palate are the flavors of the earth, not the flavors of a lab and the flavors of an artificially created ingredient. And I think that's very important, that you get that, you get those, your palate is trained in early years towards the earth.
Because it sets the foundations for the rest of life, really, doesn't it?
It does.
And anybody that's ever, I don't know, perhaps removed refined sugar from their diet for any period of time, and then they have something that's got refined sugar, and it's just wow how much your body adjusts to
Yes.
the unnatural foods, and then when you do have the natural, it's just a whole nother world.
And sometimes it takes quite an effort to move off those artificial foods when you've been so trained, your palate's so trained to want them.
So often when we go into the supermarket, we're driven by price, and there's not much connection with where the food has been grown, who's been involved in the growing process, and how that product has come to be on the shelf in front of us. How does organic teach us to have a little bit more mindfulness around the whole process of that product and the people connected, so that it's actually the true cost of the product that we can bring into our homes?
So I think on the path to organics and opening up the world is actually also, it's matching the path that consumers are taking now. They're becoming more aware of what's behind my food, what's in our food system, what am I eating, and what people am I impacting, and that becomes such a huge story. So yeah, for us, of course, we take food, we don't add anything into it. It's food from the environment. We're, of course, adding salt and a few things in that to bring out the flavor, but we're not adding artificial ingredients. But it's becoming aware of that food. What's the heritage of that food? Is it, and where does it come from? What's the impact on the people? And that's where, if you like, we've put a lot of time into our supply side and understanding the food, getting to know the people, getting to know the farmers who grow that food. So when we take food from some part of the world where it naturally grows best, like basmati rice from India, it's not a transaction, not just a financial transaction, but it's like holding hands with the farmer and holding hands with the consumer. So it's a human connection running through. And what we've got to get better is telling the story of that food so that consumers see it more. And they begin to ask questions more and to ask us, tell us about that food, we want to know.
And I think that's, well, one of the many beautiful things about not only Ceres Organics, but the organic industry as a whole, where there's nothing to hide. And that storytelling is a real, emotional connection, I think, for people. And you talk about the basmati rice grower in India. Can you tell us a little bit more about, how by using them as a supplier nurtures not only the rice, of course, but the farmers, the local community, as opposed to, say, conventional rice?
You might have read about farmers in India, about the huge number of suicides of farmers that they've, in conventional farming, they've got themselves into debt to basically inputs that have, foreign inputs that have come into the country, seed, fertilizer, and they've run up a huge debt, and they get a bad harvest, and they're just in trouble, and for some that's the only way out. Whereas within the organic world, it's actually been working in a different way. It's working with a group of farmers, so building a community of farmers supporting each other. And the price that they get for their rice is above the conventional price, so they're actually getting a better income, and they can afford to send their children off for higher education. Um, they've got stronger community ties. They know there's a community around them. So it works on a lot of levels.
So by choosing organic and having that in mind, the consciousness is not only, of course, looking after ourselves, but it's that whole connection, isn't it? That you'd become an integral part of effectively.
Yes, yes, very much so. It's a whole social world that you're supporting, a whole human world, but it's also a whole environmental world you're supporting. So you could say our food system is based on how can I take from the earth, how can I get more from the earth at a lower cost? And that means scaling up all the time the destruction of the earth to get more from nature. And genetic modification is just another step down this path. Whereas the organic world goes in a different direction. It says, how can I work with nature? How can I support um, the rhythms in nature, the ecosystems in nature? How can I enliven it where it supplies my needs, but also the needs of the ecosystem, the insects, the animals?
I love that, when you talk about the holding hands, when it creates that.
Yes, yes. So I think there's this alternative picture in the world of people working with the earth and with each other. Whereas a lot of society, you see, society which is in deep crisis, disconnection, no real view of a way forward, just insurmountable problems.
Often at talks, Noel, you have images of conventional and organic produce that's been magnified to a certain point where you can almost see, well, you can see the cellular integrity of the ingredient. Can you talk us through that when, someone might look at an organic apple and a conventional apple on the shelf and really they look very much the same, what that's happening at that deeper level?
So if we look at a organically grown apple and a conventionally or chemically grown apple, we can sort of say, oh, maybe this chemically grown apple looks better, um, might be more perfect looking. If we split it apart, our science is a physical science, so it measures the physical characteristics of that apple, and I'll just say, well, there's no more vitamins in it, or very little, or doesn't really show. It takes time for it to really come through in an organic apple. It takes quite a few years of working with the earth. But the real difference is that working out of rhythm with nature has an implant into the cellular structure of the apple that you don't see. It's not visible. It is visible if you take liquid from both, crystallize it, and magnify it to a high degree. You start to see a beautiful structure within the cell of an organic apple and the breakdown of the structure inside a chemical apple. So even at the level of just putting synthetic fertilizers on the soil, spraying the plant with herbicides, pesticides, whatever, you're interrupting the rhythms of nature. You're interrupting the life that's in there in nature, and it has an impact. But it's an impact we don't easily see.
But perhaps we feel. When we consume
Yes.
one against the other, you feel the difference.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some people develop that sensitivity towards it, others don't.
Many people, might think, well, I can't be organic all of the time. Is that the case?
The reality is in life, you go out to a cafe, you go out to a takeaway place, you go visit friends. You're not going to eat organic all the time, or you exclude yourself from social settings. I think the reality is that in your daily rhythm of meals that you include as much as possible it's organic, but especially the basics of grains and fruits and vegetables, and that you start at a realistic level and just build as to what's comfortable for yourself and for a social situation.
And that's definitely how I'd started on my path, was step by step, and then just increasing those pantry staples, as we call them. And it's having that flexibility, isn't it? But always that consciousness of connection to our food and the whole cycle that's involved.
Yes, and I think that's the important thing, is as consumers, we need to ask more questions, become more aware of what's happening in the world.
And it's okay to ask the questions.
And I think it's this picture of we can't change the past, but the future is absolutely undetermined. It depends on us as to what happens tomorrow. The step we take today determines tomorrow.
So, Noel, for people that think of organic as no chemicals, or they think of perhaps conventionally grown as just things that are added onto the plant, whether it's an insecticide, herbicide, pesticide, it really starts lower than that, doesn't it? With organic, it's starting from that seed in the soil. Can you explain to us the difference in the beautiful process that is organic growing from the soil level?
With conventional agriculture, with chemical agriculture, you're just trying to get the plant to the point of it being harvested as quickly as possible without getting attacked by insects or without getting attacked by any disease of sort. So it's your focus is on pushing that plant right through, and really the soil plays no part other than it's the medium that the plant stands in. If the soil's out of balance, well, we'll just throw a few more chemicals in to balance it up or to push it along. Or from the organic point of view, the soil is absolutely the focus. It starts there. So it's on the basis that if you have a healthy soil, then it's going to produce a healthy plant, and a healthy plant is going to be beneficial to the animals, to the insects, to the human beings that eat that plant, that we're all drawing from the same well of health that we've started with. And so it's looking at the soil in a completely different way. It's saying it's not a medium. It's actually a living organism. The soil is alive with life. And every chemical we throw on it, we're just killing that life. Every spray we're doing, we're breaking down the microorganisms that are there. Organics works from the point of view of how do I get more life into the soil? So it works with compost, it works with other preparations from nature, that it's how to get the life in the soil. So the soil is alive and really supporting the plant. And that's what carries through into the food we eat. But we don't see it all.
Now, for people to trust what they're buying is organic, we have here in New Zealand a certification process. Can you talk us through why that's important, how it can help peace of mind for consumers on the shelf when they see those organic certifications?
Absolutely. You should always look for an organic certification. And our products have BioGrow certification label on it with a number on there. So the certification is not just for New Zealand, it's a worldwide system of certification that started in the 1970s, linking the world. So it's a verification, a third-party verification of what we say about the product is correct. And organics was the first fully traceable food system in the world, where through the number on the product, it's able to be traced right back to the field where it came from. So every step of the way, organic certification has verified what's happened to that product, how it's been stored, what's been done to it. So as it comes through to the food you're eating, it's followed a whole traceable path that verifies it's true, and that's what we stand behind. This verification system is what makes it authentic food.
Traceability.
Yeah, authentically organic.
Wonderful. So we talk about the social implications of organic food. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you come to source organic suppliers, how you build those relationships, and that whole beautiful circle that goes around in partnerships?
I think it comes down to passion in the end, and that we all had a passion for organics, and then we go out and try to source another food. What we found we're looking for is somebody actually with the same passion as us. So yes, of course we're looking for certification, but it's a very dry relationship if you're just buying a product. It comes with a whole lot more than that. It comes with, what are people doing around the world? What are they doing to support the earth, support social community that they're living in? Yeah, and so that's what our relationship with suppliers was built on. How do I yeah, I want to feel like I'm working with a friend. I feel like yeah, and what I'm buying is not a dry financial transaction. This is a long-term partnership between us. This is a long-term, we're building something together. We want to make an impact. Of course, there's a financial aspect, but it's not a financial impact. We want the impact is to the earth and to the human being. And what am I buying? What am I supporting? Am I supporting that community? Wow, that's just wonderful. That just fills me with joy that that's the people I'm working with. So it's built on that basis, and so it's a human connection that carries through. And I hope, yeah, I think it's our task. And it's a huge task to build that connection from the farmer who grew this product to the consumer that eats it, because we live in a world where, well, it's a world ecosystem now, and so much of our food comes from somewhere else in the world. It's not just local communities we've got to build, and we've got to source food from local communities, but we also are reliant on communities on the other side of the world. And how do we build those human connections so it's one world?
Thank you so much for chatting today, Noel. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. It's really good talking with you. And yeah, and you find the way to bring it out of me.